It's been a fun time right now, spending time with Damon Schweikert, one of the best loudspeaker designers we have here in the United States of America. Damon, thank you for being with me in my lab, man.
Thanks for having
I
us.
appreciate you. I appreciate the opportunity to hear your creation. The Ultra 7 loudspeaker.
Yeah.
Bring the camera close so the audience can appreciate this beautiful loudspeaker. Damon is going to walk us through this particular speaker and all its strengths, of course, the cool, technology in the speaker, excuse me. And so, before we get started, you know what I need from you, right? I need that like and subscribe. It's going to be a very fun live stream. I promise you, you're going to get so much out of it. And towards the end of the live stream, we're going to take some questions.
Yeah.
Okay? My wife is going to read the questions to Damon. You can ask him anything you want. Just keep it clean, okay? All right. So, Damon, thank you again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being with me. Please share with my audience a little bit about the company, about Schweikert.
Okay. So this year is kind of an important landmark year for us. My family, my father, started designing and producing loudspeakers in Whittier, California in 1975. So we're 50 years now as a family developing loudspeakers in the U.S. So we have 5 decades of technology we've developed, things that, first principles on how we approach loudspeaker design, and I was fortunate enough to start with him at a very young age. I started in the back of the speaker, being his switch box, and swapping between different networks, and I developed my ears over years of just doing that type of analysis and moving to the front, production, design. So it's been a wonderful experience, but I'm very honored to still be doing this and making something I'm passionate about, and I have an amazing team to help us do that.
All made in the U.S.
All made in the U.S. Yeah, I mean, there's benefits of buying stuff for maybe a little bit cheaper here and there, but we wouldn't have the control of quality that's so important to us. We're not trying to be the biggest speaker company, but we want to be the best. And thank God we're still here, doing what we love and being given the opportunity by the people that invest in our brand to develop our products and produce them as bespoke to the clients that find them to be what they want in their sound system.
So, if you have been following me for a few years, you should remember by now that in the year 2023, I believe it was, Munich.
Yep.
Okay, at that show, they had these same speakers you see here, except in a different color.
Yeah.
Full of VAC electronics, Kronos turntable. That was the best sounding room at the show. Fast forward 2 years later, and here we are with those speakers. And so that's the reason why those speakers are here today, because I couldn't forget them when I heard them 2 years ago. Okay, so you know how I do it. I gotta bring it in here. I gotta listen to it with my madness behind. And by the way, we've had a lot of fun with all of these electronics behind. The Apex monoblocks that you see here, monstrous, at $109,000 each. The CH Precision A1.5, as well as the CH Precision back here, the preamplifier, the L1, the Commander Griffin preamplifier as well. And so we've been having a ball over the last 24 hours, to say the least, right?
Right.
So, but anyway, today Damon is going to walk us through this magnificent loudspeaker, the Ultra 7. He's going to give us some technical specifications, tell us what makes it so special, why is this an important loudspeaker in his loudspeaker portfolio. Right. Damon, take it away.
Thanks. All right. So the Ultra 7 is the Ultra line is our flagship line of loudspeakers, and it's an exercise in what is possible, and we're able to really exercise our talents and our ability to implement some of the best transducers, network components, signal path, all in one package. This is the Ultra 7. There's one above it, the Ultra 9 and the Ultra 11. We introduced those first. This incorporates what I think is everything that's refined about the Ultra line, but in a much more realistic real-world environment. As you can see, it's not a dominant tower system. It's real world. It'll fit in small, medium, or large rooms. It'll be able to pressurize that. And there's a lot of technology that goes into adapting it to the room. One of our core principles is lowering distortion of that signal and being able to accurately reproduce the recorded event, not just in a sterile test environment, but in your room. That pursuit of lowering distortion has kind of evolved about 20 years ago into, okay, you know, what can we do in the real world application that is also going to reduce the distortion in the room? And part of that is incorporated in this design. This is a purely passive analog loudspeaker, okay, but it incorporates what we call our foundation technology. We developed it about 20 years ago. We're on the 4th generation of that technology, and what it is, it's an amp. Yeah.
Dave, maybe we could take a quick
Oh yeah,
picture.
if I could walk around the
maybe
back.
camera it and
I can explain what we're doing here. Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, so we have the 3 woofers in the front. Mid-range, we have these are all ceramic drivers made for us by Accuton of Germany. We have a Berlin tweeter and this wonderful dual ribbon super tweeter. And then in the back, there's a whole nother story here, if I can show it to you. All right, so we have a ribbon tweeter and a horn-loaded magnesium tweeter. These are both part of what we call our ambient array, our air technology, which we've been doing since the late 70s, early 80s. We have what we call here the control suite. This is all about room adaptation, right? So it doesn't matter how linear the speaker is in the test environment, it's about room adaptation to get linear performance in the room. And to do that, we have autoformers, which we have one for the front super tweeter, one for the front tweeter, and then one for this rear array. And you have the ability to adjust them to the room in either half dB or 1 dB increments. And that's part of the setup. When you purchase this loudspeaker, if it's a 7 or up, I will personally come out, but typically our dealers are ones that come out and set this up for you, and they're trained on how to integrate it into your room. This is done during setup, this top feature of these controls, as well as the base module, and it's one and done. So once it's integrated in the room, it's not something you're going to be messing with, because now you know the speaker is linear and flat to the room. But what I was mentioning earlier down here is this foundation technology. Now, you can certainly buy this loudspeaker without the foundation technology, in which case it's a very traditional style analog speaker. But this is not digital signal processing. It's important to understand that. This is just an amplifier that we're feeding the high-level signal from your amplifier into this bottom pair binding post, which is going to the woofer network. But before that, it gets introduced into a step-down transformer that goes into the amplifier, and that goes into the crossovers and off to the drivers. We do all of that to put an amplitude control. And so, what's the beauty of this, and it's once you experience it, it kind of changes how you set up a loudspeaker system. But often bass is the dictator of where your speaker is going to sit in the room. And it's not necessarily the best bass the speaker is capable of. It's just the best bass you're going to be able to get in that room. And that might not be where the best imaging is. So with this implementation, you set the speakers for the best imaging, and then you dial, or room aesthetic, whatever it is, and then you dial the speaker flat to your room. And we've had some pretty extreme situations where we have the speaker 11 inches off the rear wall, and yet it's extremely tight, deep bass with fast speed, which is what you want. And we're able to do that with this system. One more thing that's worth noting, we can get into it later, is not only can you make the speaker level as a system to the room, but many people have asymmetrical rooms. So if a speaker, let's say this one is in a corner load, but the other channel is in an open environment, well, now you can set the speaker level for its position in the room And you can make an asymmetrical room sound symmetrical with linear bass performance from both channels.
Tons of flexibility.
Yeah.
So, did you guys write all that down? Did you guys write it down? I hope you wrote it down, right? Because I'm bringing you information, a lot of quality information. Okay, we're stepping up. I'm stepping up my game here, Jay's Audio Lab. Okay, this is why I have him here, so that he can give you better information than I can. My only feedback will be this. That's what you guys come here for, so that I can tell you my opinion. Okay, but that's not gonna come today. Okay, that I just got the speakers 3 days ago, so I need at least a month, 2 months before I can start to put pen to paper and give you my opinion on the speakers. All right. So a lot has been said about von Schweikert. I've heard a lot of people mention you. When I started my journey here in hi-fi, I always heard of the typical usual suspects, right? B&W, Wilson Audio, Magical, Martin Logan, which was my first love, Martin Logan. I said this in my last live stream, and had no clue who you were. Okay.
I'm not surprised.
Of course, I went to shows,
Yeah.
and I got to see and hear, the Ultra 9s in a beautiful red color, like a cherry red,
Cardinal red.
Cardinal red, gorgeous color. Then I saw the massive Ultra 11s that are now $375,000, and that's your statement piece.
Correct.
But one of the things that has always drawn me to his design happens to be what he just explained in the rear of the speaker. Yeah, the adjustability, the sense of more depth, more space. What those rear tweeters and mid-range drivers do in some cases is absolutely phenomenal. I've always liked it. I like the Sonos Flower SE17s that you guys saw because of that same thing, right? That sense of like so much more is happening behind the speaker that usually regular standard speakers don't capture. I feel like they don't give you the ambient, the feeling of, wow, there's another curtain that is lifted behind the speaker where you hear much more deeper into the recording. So that's one of the biggest and most important aspects of this loudspeaker for me. Now, he just went over, of course, the flexibility, the fact that they're powered, right? The woofer section is powered. So you have a lot more flexibility, right, when it comes to the amplifiers, the partnering amplifiers.
That's true. I mean, what I haven't mentioned before, and what's really important to understand is, this approach that we have, which is extremely unique. It allows you to hear whatever drove you to purchase your electronics, whether they're tube, solid state, whatever sound characteristic you liked about it. It's going to be reproduced top to bottom, even though it's going through our foundation system, because we're taking that signal off of your electronics and we're just attenuating it. That's all we're doing. One of our first principles, as I mentioned, is lowering distortion. We look at lowering distortion in every aspect of loudspeaker design, and if we put a flavor on the signal, we would be distorting it, right? So from top to bottom, you'll have that same tonality with this system.
Speaking of tonality, I know this question is coming, so I'm just going to get him to answer it. Okay, how can he integrate all these tweeters? You got a ribbon, you got a beryllium, you got a horn in the back. How can he possibly do that? Tell my audience how you're able to achieve that, because there is a lot that is happening here.
Well, okay, for one, we have an excellent team, and they've been doing this for a long time, but we're building on the foundation that my father established with the company, the principles. And one of the things that a driver has to succeed at or the speaker has to succeed at, the designer has to succeed at, is driver integration. And the way we incorporate our drivers, my father developed this network topology. He calls it GAIN, or Global Access Integration Network. And so whether we're doing 2 speakers or 2 drivers, or in the case of the 11s, 13 drivers, we're very comfortable integrating those drivers. And I encourage you, if you get a chance to hear the von Schweikert, if you want to
Speaking with one voice.
Yeah, if you want to experience what we have, I encourage you to stand a foot away from the speaker, and you're going to hear one voice. That's that integration. My father was not just an engineer; he was a musician. He was classically trained in piano as a child, and then he got into guitar in his teenage years. And But the reference to live music never stopped, and the piano is a great tool to use to understand the balance of a speaker, and most importantly, the integration of the drivers. It's going to tell you as you're going up and down the scale if there's a suck out or a peak or there's an overhang or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I mean, we use live music to as a reference when we're doing integration, and I think you can notice over the decades that we've been doing this that we've been fairly successful in that regard.
All right, so before we continue, there is 126 of you, and I only have 35 likes. 132 of you, and only 35 likes. What's up with that, guys? You know what to do. Give me that like. I need to call more people. I need to make this live stream productive. These guys flew all the way from California. I need you to hit the like button, okay, so that we can get this video to do really well. All right, I rely on you. All right, let's move on to part 2 of the system, which is something that very few brands ever mention. You're actually the first person that mentions this to me, the importance of what you see behind.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think the 7 and our speakers, especially ones that incorporate the foundation technology, are very adept at integrating into a room and delivering a more linear, coherent, fast presentation of the recorded event. But for those that want to take it just a little step further, and I guess to go back, the first principle is the room is always going to have its say. It doesn't matter how linear the speaker is in a test environment. It comes in the room. There's going to be bass reinforcement or suck out. There's going to be high reflections and all that. And so, like I said, during setup, we want to get it linear to the room. Well, there's one more aspect of the room that has a big impact on your overall presentation, and that's the standing wave. There's a lot of passive product that you can buy and fill up your room with, and unfortunately, when you're doing that, you're affecting the law of unintended consequences for everything you change intentionally. There are 2 things you're changing unintentionally, at least, right? So again, we're all about accuracy of the reproduction, and what we're doing here is we're using what you would know as a subwoofer. Unfortunately, subwoofers have this connotation that this is thought that people come to mind of something rumbling in the corner. That's not what's going on here. We're using this, and I call it active room correction, but there's no digital signal processing going on here. This is an analog solution to correct for that standing wave. So what we do is we're wiring it off the bottom pair of binding posts on the speakers, again, the woofer, and we call it a signal sensing cable. It's a nice name for a speaker cable. And we're feeding, again, a foundation amplifier. This one has more than amplitude. It's very important. It has a crossover frequency, phase adjustment, and a gain, obviously, and then an LF adjust at about 25 dB. And this incorporates, again, that Lundahl step-down transformer that electronically isolates the subwoofer from your amplifier. And why that's important is this phase control goes from 0 to 180 degrees, and you can adjust it at whatever phase angle you need. But what's also important is you can invert the inputs and go from 180 to 360. So we can do the entire frequency, the entire phase angle of a possibility. And why that's important is through manipulation of these controls, we're adjusting a wave launch that equals the base wave launch in amplitude, frequency, and phase, so that it's canceling right at the back of the room. There's a sound barrier of equal pressure, so it launches from the front of the room and immediately hits, based on timing and phase, at the back of the room. And how you know it's working is you get even tighter, deeper bass, but more importantly, you get more coherent mids and highs, because the distortion of another wave coming back into the room and hitting the next sound wave is gone. It's completely eliminated. And so, it's again, my father was all about elegant solutions, and we try to continue doing that. We've been doing this for about 20 years now. And if you've been to one of our audio shows with one of our big rooms, this is a great way to do the lion's share of room treatment without all the extra panels and everything else. It's just a unique way that we do it. This is the Shockwave Mark II, and what's different about the Mark II is it has a slotted vented port in the bottom, which gives us even more versatility in introducing it into the system. As you see here, this is a 12-inch. We're firing just a few inches off the wall. It's giving me, I like to call it torque, a little bit more control on a microcontrol on those controls to equalize that pressure just right, so that when it's working, you don't hear anything. There's no bass coming from here. It's a void because it's canceling, and all the bass is coming from that side of the room. And like I said, from top to bottom, there's the lack of distortion of that standing wave. It also makes the listening environment, you can be very close to a wall, and as long as these diaphragms are behind your ear, you're not getting that bass buildup or any type of room boundary interaction. And what's nice about that is now we've flattened all the nodes in the room, so you can walk around the room when the system's playing and you're not hearing dips and peaks in the bass. It's very linear. So,
Oh, but there's something else. There's another one here. So,
right. So
it's
we're doing one for each channel, right? So this is taking the signal off the left channel. The other one is taking the signal off the right channel. And so, you know, if you've got a asymmetrical presentation where the upright bass is on the right side, you know, but you've got drums over here, it's going to be reacting to the wave launch from both channels.
Damon, question, is it possible to, and leading question.
Sure. Go ahead.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Could you stack woofers and then
Oh, absolutely.
do also more amplitude on the bass,
Sure.
but correction at
Right.
the same time?
So,
is that doable?
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
And what we've done in this system, we set up the system, the way we approach it is you set the mains up first. You get them dialed in, get them flat, and then we integrate the room correction. But to Gary's point, you know, either with a stacked system or whatever, I was able to throw a little bit more from the front channel with that correction and just give you that extra amount of impact and tightness and tautness by doing that. So yeah, it's a back and forth, and it's a dance between these two speakers and how they're launching and catching, right? But yeah, it gives you that extra little bit on top.
Okay.
But you forgot one big thing.
Okay.
Pricing.
Yes.
What are we talking about in terms of price?
Okay. So the Ultra 7 in this configuration with foundation is $190,000 a pair, and you can get it without foundation, as you know, because it is a purely analog passive system in there for $184, and then the price on the rear
About
12s,
20.
about 20 each.
For the 12s.
For the 12s, yeah.
So we're going to continue with another part of this live stream. Before we go on and start taking some questions, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Okay, I want to do more of these actual, like, meaningful live streams. These are meaningful live streams, right? This is what you all want to see, not some BS live streams. Then I need you to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. All right. So we talked about the system. We talked about the importance of the shockwave subwoofers and how they help cancel a lot of the room issues that we normally see, right? Which I have to say I was beyond impressed. I've only heard it with the subs engaged for maybe 10 minutes. And it was a completely different system than what I heard last night. Completely different system. I know many of you are constantly emailing me about, Jay, I have tubes. I don't want to go away from tubes. I like the tube sound. Recommend me a speaker, right? It's one thing that I get emails almost every other day, okay? There are many passionate tube lovers out there. What I like about this approach is the fact that you can indeed use amplifiers that don't have to have what these boys do. Now, that's not to say that we're not going to say that these don't make these sing even that much better, because they certainly do. But it's not mandatory. You have options. Nothing is mandatory. When you have options, you choose what suits you, what's important to you and your wallet, of course, right? Now, and I made this comment to you yesterday about, I feel like there needs to be a product, a loudspeaker, at a more affordable price point. But you did have the VR30s, a Capital Audio Fest, which was a very, very hot selling product. It is actually a hot selling product for you. What is the importance of the VR30 in the lineup? Because it resembles a lot of this, not much cheaper packaging.
Well, okay, so I'll start by saying that our internal code name, project name of the 30 was the Mini 7. It incorporates a lot, exact same tweeter. It incorporates a new cell driver, but a 3-driver array that has extremely what's the word I'm looking for as far as its X-Max, right? So it travel flow, the power handling and the motor structure, it's just a lot in a slightly smaller package.
Yes.
But they're roughly about this tall. And I think the main goal was, we've been known for doing a lot of ultra high-end loudspeakers.
Yes.
But there was definitely like a hole in our line
Yes.
from the Model 1 up to the Ultra 50, right? Or VR 50. And so, we needed to develop something attainable at a very important price point of $50,000 to $60,000. And that's where the VR 30 lands. With Foundation, it's 59, and without it's 53. Yeah, 53.
Are you saying that could be the speaker that those who are thinking about buying a Wilson Audio /RV should be looking into? Perhaps those of you who are thinking about spending 50, 60, even 70,000, or maybe all the way up to 100. For all I know, maybe you ought to look into that VR 30, because what I heard at Capitol Audio was really, really phenomenal. I mean, it scales like a big speaker. And that's something that I have stated many times, and I'll say it again. When I started this hobby, I never saw speakers of that size throw that massive sound stage, let alone the punch, let alone that low register, because anytime we talk about speakers with a lot of bass output, we're thinking big cabinets. Right? That's just how it is. We've been basically conditioned to think that way. Right. But I think that the advancements in technology are showing us that that's no longer the case.
Well, I mean, there's been a focus for that. I think I mentioned when we were talking the other day about, we started in Whittier, California, with these big giant ranch homes. And so we had these huge dens that we would use for our sound systems. And so we had the benefit of, doing big boxes and what have you to get bass. And we realized once we got out of our little world is that, many sound rooms do not reflect that. And so space is very important. And so we've spent a good 40 years working on developing speakers that are, in room flat to 20 hertz or lower, and yet incorporate a much smaller footprint. And one of the first principles of my father's about woofer design is, back initially when he started, everyone was using much larger, paper woofers or polypropylene woofers, and to achieve bass. And you could achieve bass, but it was a quantity versus quality thing. And his, approach, and we're still doing that today in these designs, is, well, you can produce the same quantity of bass with more smaller drivers, yet dramatically improve the quality of bass. And I think the VR30 really represents it. I mean, those are in room flat to 20 hertz, with no apology.
Yeah. And Damon, it's about tone and texture.
Tone and texture. It's about definition and detail.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like also about your brand is the color schemes. You think outside the box. I'm about to throw up anytime I think about a gloss black loudspeaker. Unfortunately, and I'm going to keep it real, I oftentimes buy gloss black speakers because of you. Because when I'm done with it, I have to sell it. And most of you don't buy anything else other than black speakers, black amplifiers. And so I wish we had a little more flexibility. And if the wives are watching me, you guys are culpable of that too. Because I know you're telling the husbands, don't bring that silver speaker into this living room. So the wives that are watching me, you guys are culpable. Have a little more flexibility, okay? Just a little more, so that we can actually allow these guys to design with more creativity, give us different color schemes, red, blue, yellow, who knows, right? So I like the fact that, for example, this color, I've never seen it before. Yeah. I think it's beautiful. It looks, to you, some of you think it looks like a military green. It's not. It's the lighting, by the way. So it isn't really a military. What's the color again?
So this is Ferrari Grigio Scuro. It's a charcoal gray color.
Non-metallic.
Non-metallic, right? But although we do metallic, It's a very contemporary design, and I think it's quite room friendly. To me, yes, I did high gloss black speakers. We're proud of the quality of our high gloss black speakers. They're like a black mirror. But for me, this is the preferred color. I think it's as equally, elegant as high gloss black, but yet it's a more refined look, and it shows the shape of the speaker much better than a high gloss black would. And it's all about, what's important to understand is whether you're buying the Model 1 or the Ultra 11, everything is bespoke. It's built to order. These are not commodities. We know who we're building it for. They're picking out a color that suits them best, and we're happy to take that out. If it's an automotive finish, give us make, model, and year. We'll find out what that color code is, and then we'll match it. So, and people are quite creative. It's a fun process getting a new color in the shop and checking it out.
Absolutely. What are the lead times on average for a Von Schweikert speaker?
It's about 6 to 8 weeks. We work really hard to, it's bespoke, but we don't want people waiting 6 months for a purchase. You take a lot of time to decide on what you want, but once you do that, you want to enjoy it as quickly as possible. So in our construction process, we've developed as many techniques to shorten that production time. At the minute an order comes in, the cabinet goes into paint, because paint is a big part of that process. To do it right, to get this level of finish, and you have to let it outgas. You have to do multiple layers of treatment, and so right up until the end, let it harden, and right up to the end, that paint is being done. Then it's brought into the shop. All the sub-assemblies are done, and it's put together, and then tested, broken in, and delivered.
All right, so I'm going to make a quick pause right now, and I'm going to bring Gary Leeds, who happens to be the VP of the company. Okay, guys, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. How many subscribers do we have? How many people are watching?
182.
182 of you.
120 likes.
Let's get to 200 likes, guys. Let's get to 200 likes. I'm going to make it very cool. You guys are going to love this live stream, I promise you. Gary, welcome to my channel. Appreciate you, VP, Von Schweikert. And he was talking about this particular model, this loudspeaker. But he mentioned something, he said something very interesting. We're building speakers for a certain type of customer. Tell us what type of customer are you guys looking for this?
Absolutely. Let me, I'll just riff a little off on what the company's about. 100% based in the US. All the supporting businesses that make the components and work with us to the final product are second generation families. Just like the Von Schweikerts, they've been with the company producing with us for decades. So it's not a mass production process. We're building a very particular product for a particular buyer. Most of our customers, this is the last speaker they'll ever buy. They'll come into a loudspeaker, they'll buy it at a comfort level of the performance, and they'll hang on to it. So proof positive this, if you go on to one of the used or pre-sale platforms like an AudioGun, for example, you're rarely, if ever, going to see a Von Schweikert speaker for sale, which is not common. This speaker's been out now, Jay saw the first live version of this speaker in Munich coming up in May, so it's not even 2 years. But we don't have Mark IVs, Mark Vs, Mark VIIs. we don't change the cap and obsolete your speaker and make the resale value of that product drop precipitously. So when we put out a speaker, it's the best we can build, and we're looking out 5 years or more about can it be meaningfully improved upon. The other thing, as Damon described, is when an order is placed through your dealer, and we'll talk a little bit about our different approach there, okay? Again, you're going to specify the model, you're going to specify the color, you're going to specify whether you want the foundation system, which, by the way, folks, today, 8 out of 10 speakers leaving the shop, and the VR30s, our newest model, the whole first batch is sold out, 100% foundation. So, you know, the industry's evolving to new technologies, but you guys still want that pure analog thing. We're starting to get that message out about why this is different than a traditional powered speaker. So the next thing I want to talk about is today, and this is what I'm spending most of my time on, is we're in no hurry to put partners on. The people we do business with, we want to do it over a long period of time. We want to train with them, we want to partner with them, and because we don't have 30, 40, 50 dealers, we're able to provide a much higher level of customization. As Damon said, if you buy an Ultra 7, an Ultra 9, an Ultra 11, literally, if it's scheduled in enough time, Damon's going to personally come there with your dealer and spend a couple of days setting that loudspeaker up in your home. And it's kind of a very bespoke experience. So yes, you're paying a lot of money for a product like this, but you're also getting a lot with it. And so our idea is, if you invest in a von Schweikert speaker, we want that value to maintain itself over a long period of time. And so this approach of limited distribution, highly trained, very committed, dedicated, but a handful of dealers, as opposed to the mass distribution model, we think that's better than, going out there, getting your discounts, just kind of getting the box, getting it in, and then in a year, 2, 3, all of a sudden there's series model changes and then devaluing your investment. So it's just a different way of looking at the business. And again, it's not the biggest, but we think it's the best way to go out and produce. I mean, you're buying cars here, big
For
cars.
sure,
all right?
absolutely.
And so it's
You
not
are.
just this,
Yeah.
3 years, lease it, buy it, flip it.
Yeah.
It's a long-term investment.
And if you're looking for a deal on one of them, good luck with that. I'll see you in the year 2030 and see where we're at. Because there's a reason why you're never going to see an Ultra 7 on the used websites, the websites that sell high-end audio. You're not going to see the speaker. If you're looking for audio, going, good luck with that. Okay. If you looked at the Ultra 9, which is the model above it, it came out approximately 8 years ago.
Yes.
There's a reason why you haven't seen one on the used market, ever. A reason, a big reason. That is because people keep it. Now, of course, they're not mass producing Ultra 9s. They're not making 200 Ultra 9s a week. So, of course, you don't have thousands of them on the field. That's understood. Okay, but that just speaks volumes. Okay, so when you're looking at a product of this caliber, this pedigree, I encourage you personally to work with your dealer network. If you have a relationship with a dealer of yours, inquire about the product, because this is probably, I am 99.999% sure, not going to be the speaker you're going to see on AudioGone or eBay. Okay, it just won't be.
Jay, if I could amplify a point, here's one approach to buying a loudspeaker. Buy the best loudspeaker you can afford.
Yeah.
This will run with your current electronics.
Easily.
Okay, it should
easily.
be good.
Yep.
I mean, we're not talking about a receiver here.
Right. Nope.
But if you have solid electronics, you have a Parasound,
Right.
a great amplifier for
Yeah.
money, right? Just an example, a Bryston, right? It doesn't have to be an Apex, all right? Buy the best speaker you can afford to buy, and then build your system up from there. Cables, digital changing very fast right now, right? So you're investing in a system, digital just keeps getting better and better, right?
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Buy the best loudspeaker you can, because when we went from a less performance amp, still very good, but when we went last night,
Oh yeah.
warmed up these bad boys, it was like,
So yesterday, to give you guys some context, we were using the CH Precision 1.5 stereo amplifier and the L1 preamplifier. And granted, it's 150 watts per channel. It did some interesting things. But as we were doing the fine tuning, right, and I knew this, I had my shotguns behind me, ready to go. They were just winking at me, smiling, right? Telling me, go ahead and play with everything else. Just let me show you what this is about. So we turned them on, we plugged them in, and it was like, okay, we had to kind of it was a reset for our ears, because the soundstage was just, the walls fell down. It was just, it felt like another speaker, like the larger brother would probably feel, okay? And that just speaks volumes about the quality of the watts. One of the things that I was telling Damon today as we were listening to the system prior to this live stream was how I felt personally that the speakers were sorting out the mid-range and the instruments were a complement on top of the vocals. So you didn't hear a scrambled effect of the presentation. A lot of speakers out there are scrambling percussion, vocals, and everything all together in one to present to you the music, right? I felt that as I sat in the middle and I listened to the mid-range with this speaker, sat there, I can actually make out the words. It was very nuanced, very well sorted, the vocals I'm talking about. And then you heard all the instruments kind of complement his voice around. So you got an understanding of, what was happening within the recording. In addition to that, you were talking about whenever we have a presentation when it's very complicated, a lot of voices,
Complex,
a lot of vocals, complex,
yeah, a lot
right?
of layers, yeah.
Yeah, it's how some speakers just blend them all together.
Yeah.
Then you hear there are women, men, and so forth.
There's some really great recordings out there, of course, in some systems you get kind of this homogenized roar of the course, and
Course,
yet
yeah.
other ones you can hear all the different voices, the different heights, and from my opinion, that's about speed. It's the ability to start and stop very quickly and delineate multiple voices at the same time. And when there's overhang, when it's a little slow, those types of things start to distort the wave launch, and then you get that kind of effect. So again, whether it's the wave launch or it's the network or signal path or cabinet, it's all about lowering distortion. Or in this case, the foundation and shockwave, it's about lowering distortion in the room.
Without a doubt, and obviously, I've said it a million times, it's a system, right? So these boys have a lot to do with what we heard as well, right? I mean, the speed, the effortlessness, the power, the definition of the Apex is just unbelievable. And what's cool about it, and I mentioned it to them too, is I wish we could take this show on the road. I wish we could take my Apex monos with the Commander and my DAC with the Ultra 7s to the next show, and I don't think anyone would leave that room, quite frankly. I wish you guys could hear the Apex monos with the Ultra 7s. Oftentimes you'll hear them with back for the most part. The majority of the times at shows, it was back with Schweikert. Nothing wrong with it. It's a phenomenal,
Very
fantastic,
good, yes.
proven combination. Kevin makes some of the best electronics that money can buy. I love VAC. But if you hear it with this level of solid state, it's just another world. The precision, the speed, the way it controls. And by the way, something interesting that I must share with the audience.
Yeah.
I also felt as if the bass changed. The tonality of the bass of the speaker changed, even though they're self-powered. When we went from the CH to the Apex, it translated as well with the speaker. The bass actually shifted. It had more grunt. So it's confusing to me.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because that's exactly what we would like people to experience, if possible, is hearing different electronics in front of the same pair of speakers, because then you realize just how much they can resolve in different ways depending on what's being put into them, driven into them.
Right.
And I think it speaks to the fact that the foundation technology is really transparent. It's just taking that signal, knocking it down, and giving you an amplitude control, and then it feeds into the network. So you're going to hear those characteristics, those nuanced differences in the bass, and what drove you to that pair versus that. It'll resolve it.
It's like it understands what that amp comes with in terms of the low registers. It's like it reads it and it knows, okay, so you got a lot of bass, so I'm going to transform that and let the audience know that you have a lot of bass.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, cool thing I've never experienced before. Anyway, we're going to transition to the final part of this live stream. How many people are watching?
175 with 143 likes.
Okay, guys, before we get started and start taking your questions, I want you guys to hit the like button, subscribe, check out my website, jasaudiolab.com, for more ultra high-end used audio equipment for sale. We're going to put the camera on the tripod at this time so that my wife's arms are not falling off her body, okay? And she's going to read off the question, so bear with us, okay? You can hold on. You have the mic? Yeah, there he has the mic.
I can't see. Yep.
Give us a minute.
No worries.
There we go.
That way you can just read. Okay, so let us know when you can read questions.
Yeah. I'll need a mic, bro.
Yeah, you're gonna need a mic. Yep.
Okay.
So that people can look at questions. So, okay, guys, you can start submitting your questions. We're gonna go down the questions that have been coming in and answer them as we go. Or if you have them for me, then it's fine.
Okay, let's see. Let me find the first question here. Any advantage of a 15-inch subwoofer over a 12-inch?
You know, it really just depends on the room dynamics. You know, what's important is when you're shopping for a system, you want to have a dealer that takes the time to listen to you and understand, you know, what you have, your room, your electronics. Why are you looking to change your system? What about it you would like better? And during that process, the dealer should make a determination of whether the 12-inch or the 15-inch is going to be better. Both can be used in a lot of applications. It's just a matter of budget and room dynamics. But the 12s can be quite adaptable even in a large room. But with depending on room and size, you know, the 15 is going to be a little more appropriate.
Okay, you've already addressed this question, but just in case for those that joined later, what color are those U7s?
Oh, okay. These are Ferrari Grigio Scuro. It's a non-metallic finish, a charcoal gray. It's really quite elegant, and it's a popular finish on their current line of cars.
Perfect. Hey Jay, what do you do for a living? Those speakers are gorgeous, by the way.
Thank you. I just work. You're watching me work right now, bringing people into my lab and staying productive. You know, I don't stop 24/7. So that's what I do.
True.
You know, I just discovered this hobby and it became a passion of mine, and then I turned it into a business.
Someone said, just waiting for Jay to say like and subscribe. So let's do that. Let's like and
Awesome.
subscribe.
You're
Like
my
and
man right
subscribe.
there. You're my man. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have a digital microphone or software to measure and adjust the tweeters and super tweeters? I cannot imagine just listening would be precise enough.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, there's different approaches. I am quite comfortable, you know, listening. I have, as you see, I have my little library of tracks.
Yep.
Not the best tracks necessarily, but stuff I've listened to for 40, 50 years now. And I'll play 5 seconds, I'll
Right.
play 2 minutes,
Yep.
whatever. And I'm listening for different things to dial it in. But and I'm very comfortable with that.
Dude, isn't it a question of flat versus a tonality that works for you?
It does.
Because
I mean,
we all have different hearing,
right.
and some have hearing loss, so they're going to need a little extra boost in the highs.
Yeah.
It you know, and the ear is the greatest measuring
There's
instrument,
it's,
but there is softwares,
there is software. Yeah.
very affordable,
Mhm.
that people can buy, and many of our dealers have it, but we do train them in our method, right?
Right.
So,
And I think it's important to understand that we are setting up the speakers for a client. So when we come in, whether it's me and the dealer or
what's
the
the
dealer,
process, right?
and we have a process, but we achieve what we call a baseline. Once we achieve that baseline, then we move out and the customer moves in and goes through the music that they're familiar with, and there's a dialogue that happens over time, and we demonstrate, you know, what the different controls can do. You know, I not to get too off tangent, but I approach room setup and system setup like trying to understand a new sailboat. You know, every boat's different. They have different sails and different rigging. But once you understand the parameters by going all the way here and all the way there, you can begin to understand how to integrate the system and speakers into the room, and also, you know, to catch the most wind, let's say, with whatever sails you have by just getting to explore and understand the room. I think you saw me.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time walking
Oh, yeah.
around the room.
I saw you, yeah.
It's not about there. It's about the entire experience, and part of that is also familiarizing the client with what the speaker's capable of. They're witnessing, they're contributing through the whole process, and at the end of it, ultimately, it's about their satisfaction. What is linear for them in that room, and that's where it stays.
Someone said, RG said, met Albert, big fan of his design and approach, like father, like son,
Thanks.
Awesome.
and love the
Appreciate that.
video.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Can you speak to the tweeter design? I'm not sure if you want to
Yeah,
elaborate
yeah.
a little bit.
So we have quite a few tweeters in the speaker. The main tweeter is our house beryllium tweeter. You can find this on our Model 1 all the way up to our Ultra 11. And it's just a wonderful tweeter that gives us all that resolution that we want without tattletaling on the material it's made out of, right? It just disappears and integrates really well. On this model, we have the benefit in the parts budget to integrate this wonderful dual ribbon super tweeter. If you have the experience of a super tweeter, I would assume that you understand how it provides space and air into a system. It's more something you realize what the heck happened when you turned it off as opposed to when you turn it on. Again, these are attenuated for room interaction. And then in the very back of the speaker, we mentioned the tweeter array. For those that are new, we have a ribbon tweeter on the back and a horn-loaded magnesium cone tweeter in the back as well, both of which are controlled with a single autoformer. And it's the network that we drive that with is, we call it the AIR network, ambient inverse replication. And it's not a gimmick. It's something we've been doing since the late 70s, early 80s. I think the last model of the Vortex screen my dad designed incorporated it for the first time. It's been present in our VR4s in the 90s, very popular design, the VR5s, and on through the decades. And the whole idea of what we're doing, you notice there's not a lot of toe-in on these speakers. We design speakers that are very linear on a vertical and and a horizontal and vertical off-axis. The core of our technology is, the purpose of this loudspeaker is to inversely decode with a microphone encode. So an Omni mic is picking up information not just from the front, but from the sides and the rear, and oftentimes at a slightly off-axis out of phase angle. So the point of the rear tweeter array is to fulfill that. And what you get is all the space that you would get from a planar, but with all the accuracy you would get from a bookshelf pair of speakers, pinpoint accuracy. And it's very wide soundstage that goes well beyond the parameters of the speakers and depth. It's adjustable, right? So we integrate it into the room. And you know, it's subjective to some element, but we bring it on like a super tweeter. So we set them up without them on, and then we slowly bring them on until we've got the right soundstage. We're not hearing rear tweeters. We're just experiencing that depth of soundstage and that space, and then we stop. So
Great. We have 170 people watching and 170 likes. So thank you for those likes, guys. That's awesome. I think we kind of briefly covered this, but I don't know if you want to go over it just like
Sure.
briefly for those who joined later.
Yeah.
Could you also go over how the system was set up yesterday? Frequency measurements, time alignment, angle, and placement.
yeah, well, obviously, you know, we came into, the first thing I noticed when I came in was the sound quality of the room. You know, when I'm setting up a system, you listen to the room because, again, it doesn't matter how perfect your speaker is, the room is going to have its say. And a lot of our technology that we're doing nowadays is not just about removing distortion from the actual loudspeaker, it's about adjusting and eliminating distortion in the room. So the room here is quite natural sounding. You walk around the room, whether against the wall, whatever, my voice doesn't change and become colored, so it's a very nice palette to start with. But we kind of put them in initially to see where they sounded in this space. As you see, I don't know, well, on the floor here, sorry,
No worries.
we have markings of where the previous speakers were, and you can see we have a lot less toe-in, we're in a different position. So what the driving factor is initially is, for me, because of the foundation technology, is finding the place in the room where we can achieve the best sound stage. And, you know, we kind of, I try to get them as wide apart until I start losing that center image, and then I stop there and maybe give it a little bit of toe in so we get that solid center image again. But by doing it that way, we get so much more space and depth in the soundstage. that goes beyond it. And then for those that don't know or weren't here, this pair of speakers incorporates our foundation technology. I won't spend too much on it. If you're interested, watch the video, go back there. But the bottom line is, this is an analog speaker with analog networks. This is not digital signal processing. It's a very unique implementation. We've been doing it for 20 years. And we have an amplifier for just the woofer section that takes the signal from your electronics, your amplifier, knocks it down, feeds the network, feeds the drivers. We do all that to put in amplitude control. So once I achieve the imaging that we want, then we dial the bass in to get the best bass we can in that spot. We're not doing that, splitting the difference between, well, the bass is great here or there, but the imaging's better here. We go with the imaging first, and then we integrate the bass.
Thank you for that explanation. So someone is commenting and saying, what's your take on this? All of that room treatment, and even when they are talking, I'm hearing reverb. So strange. How can it not be even more when the music gets loud?
So, in my opinion, what you're hearing is the effect of the mic. I can tell you from my personal experience firsthand, it's very natural sounding. Like I said, if I move right up against that wall and Jay's sitting in the listening position, my voice doesn't become like this or distorted. So certain mics pick up, especially with these, these types of mics, they're very great, but their frequency range is very limited. And because of that, they accentuate certain frequencies. But trust me, in the room here, it sounds very natural.
Great. So I think this question is for my husband, perhaps.
Okay.
How did you come to the conclusion that these speakers are the best value in every category in the high-end segment? Have you had the chance to extensively test out all high-end speakers out there? Let's elaborate on that one.
Well, I mean, if you've been following me for some time, you would know by now I've had a lot of different things. And that's really one of my biggest objectives here on my channel, is to go through as much audio equipment as I can, right? Meaning owning it, sitting in that chair, playing with it, understanding the designer's intent. What is it that we're trying to let us know by creating such products, right? And so no, I have not had the chance to own every single speaker. That's just that's impossible. But what I can tell you is I've owned some of the best loudspeakers that money can buy. And so I use those as the measuring stick to understand and gauge the performance of the Ultra 7s. And so by doing so, I am able to understand where does that sit in relation to those that I have really, really praised in the past. What kind of performance does it bring to the table? And so these are definitely with the top dogs. I mean, there is no question about that. First of all, the flexibility part is something that very few loudspeakers have. Very few speakers are going to allow you to tweak and obviously place the speakers, let alone place the speakers, as close as 11 inches to the wall behind them. And that in itself usually is what I call the wife approval killer factor.
Right. Yeah.
That's going to kill your wife's desire to bring a speaker, which is if your speakers need to be, like in most cases, 5 feet from the wall behind them, most wives are not going to allow that. With these 11 inches, I think you can make a case for yourself. If you've been looking for an ultra high-end speaker that not only can be placed against the room boundaries, but also looks good doing it too, it's a winning combo.
If I could piggyback on that real quick, let me just give you my perspective as someone in a manufacturer, right? So we go to a lot of shows. I don't spend a lot of time, as much as I would like, outside of my room. I'm there demonstrating. But Jay, along with a lot of other people, they're coming to these shows and they're hearing a lot of systems, right? Mm-hmm. So that's expanding their experience, their first-hand experience. That said, it's entirely different, and I encourage people that are shopping for the systems. It's one thing to hear it at a show. It's another thing to hear it at a dealer's sound room where they've been set up for a while and they're in place, and it's completely different to hear it in your own home environment with your system. And that's something that Jay's doing. I mean, just from my experience setting up yesterday, the ability to go through world-class electronics and adjust the system. And then I was really pleased from a personal perspective that Jay was there to witness, and I love it when customers can witness this, how differently the Ultra 7s present based on what's put in front of them.
Yep.
You know, there's been a lot of emphasis on the fact that we showed with VAC a lot, and you know, I'll take the credit or the blame for that because I have a deep respect for Kevin. You know,
So do I, yeah.
he was very
Love the
close with my
amplifiers,
father.
yeah.
He does a beautiful work, right? And you know, and I was looking for someone that was willing to take some big systems around and show them, and he was gracious enough to be a part of that, and I will be forever thankful. But even Kevin and I talked about, you know, we're doing it for so long that you begin to generate a perspective that, you know, oh, von Schweikert, they worked with VAC or VAC with von Schweikert. Kevin always did a much better job of loaning out electronics. It's much easier than loaning speakers out because of the setup process. And he had some good partners to work with, so he was always able to demonstrate them with, you know, his electronics with other loudspeakers. It's only since COVID lockdowns that you know, I finally was able to rectify that and let people experience them at shows with different types of electronics, most notably the Westminster Lab electronics. So I think it's important that people understand that part of our process in developing a loudspeaker, we're very focused on neutrality. The only way to truly assess, in my opinion, as a designer, the qualities or lack thereof of your design is being able to listen to it on a lot of electronics. And we have a whole stable of electronics from tube to solid state to digital that we analyze our speakers, and by doing that from different facets, we get an understanding of what the speaker is. And so, you know, perception is 90% of reality, and I've done a job of altering perception to how we showed with it, but it was wonderful to come into Jay's lab and have all that different gear to quickly go through and hear how different the speakers sound based on the qualities of what's put in front of them.
That's actually what I love about what I do here, which is why I basically came up with the name Jay's Audio Lab, right? Because the goal is for you to come in here and strap on any electronic you want, any amp, any preamp,
Cables,
footers,
whatever.
We have all kinds of things here readily available for us to play with, and at the same time, these guys take notes and understand, wow, okay, we're going back to California, but we now know what the Apex and the Commander do with our products.
Absolutely.
But they had never heard it either.
It's the first.
So it was great. It's a great, you know, talking point going forward, right? So we're starting to discover the importance of system matching. Now, I'll say this too, and I had this conversation with you when I was listening to my tracks earlier today, right?
Yeah.
As I was evaluating the top end of the speaker, I was trying to understand whether I wanted a little more sizzle up top or airiness, right?
Yeah.
Or not. What I typically do is I listen to a collection of songs, all kinds of songs.
Yeah.
Those that I know that are blurry sounding, meaning darker, the top end is rolled off, it's not really detailed, through basically the main audiophile grade songs that we listen to, right? So what I typically like to do is listen to it all. Don't touch anything on the speaker, because you need time listening before you begin playing with those knobs.
Right.
Okay, you need time. And here's why. If my first instinct, my first reaction was to get up and go to the back of the speaker and start turning knobs to give it more top end, right? To those songs that I feel are not really detailed, they're on the just trash, essentially, music, right? That is not really well recorded. What happens is that song is gonna sound probably better to my liking, but then the next song that already has the detail, now you're making that song spicier, if that makes sense. Hotter sounding. You see the problem there? You see the problem there, right? So you have to learn to accept songs for what they are. Now, can you go to the back occasionally and tune it to your liking because you have a playlist of songs from the 70s and 60s that are not well recorded?
Yeah.
Sure, the speaker's not allow you to do that, but that's not reality.
No.
You're not changing the songs.
No.
You're not a studio engineer. You're not a recording engineer. That's not your job. Your job is to let the speaker play you what you're feeding them.
Yeah. I want people to understand the purpose of the controls in the back is about room integration, and from my perspective, it's a one and done deal. So you spend the time to go through different tracks or whatever, understand the room, and get the most you can out of these speakers in this space. But once that's done, you forget about it and you just enjoy the loudspeakers. You could drive yourself nuts trying to equalize a system. That said, there's that subjective element, and if that's something that you enjoy, you certainly can do it. But it's not where we come from, and when we set up for optimizing for the room, not for recording.
Okay, great. Next question here. How would they sound with a Marantz AV receiver?
Well, the elements of the Marantz that you like are going to come through. I mean, what I try to explain, and I hope you understand where I'm coming from, is a loudspeaker cannot improve the signal in any way. I think a loudspeaker can only deteriorate that signal. So as a shepherd of the signal, as the designer, as the team working on this, we're doing everything we can, whether it's a cabinet resonance, signal path, cone material, motor structure, wave launch, damping inside, all that kind of stuff, to put the least amount of footprint on that signal. That said, they're going to reproduce what is put in front of them. As a loudspeaker designer, I benefit from the lion's share of the credit or the blame for how something sounds in a system or in a show. But the reality is that, and Jay got to experience it firsthand, these will dramatically transform based on what's put before them. You can certainly run them with a Marantz, and we've always had a selection of customers that are very favorable to different types of electronics and vocal online, and they love the pairing. But I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to electronics, and I'm just trying to keep a very open mind about everything I experience and adjust accordingly. So, yeah, I think it'll bring out the virtues of that product.
Okay, we have 159 people watching and 197 likes, so that's great. Keep those likes coming. We have people saying this is a great presentation. And then next question, who is all part of the design team that work on designing this speaker from concept to production model? And is there any difference in terms of people working on the design for the different lines?
Typically, no. I mean, we have different designers that we've worked with as far as network technology, but the truth is that it is a team effort, and there's a lot of impact, whether they're working on network design, industrial design, final voicing, which is oddly enough,
tech,
driver tech. I mean, we benefit from a lot of engineers that focus on transducers, and we're kind of a member of the Speaker of the Month Club. We get prototypes from other designers, and what we focus on is the overall concept of the design, what we're trying to achieve, that selection and driver integration, and it's about 4 people in total, going from cabinet to industrial to electrical and finally voicing that achieves it. So, yeah, it's a team effort.
Too modest. You're the voicing man.
Yeah, let's put it this way. I will not.
Your dad and now you.
I will not put our name on a speaker or produce a speaker that I don't think lives up to the standards of which we've set. And I hope, if I'm doing what I intend to, I hope people see either a level of standard of quality across whatever product we come out with, either equalizing what's been done in previous decades or improving upon. We're not driven by, we need a widget at this price point, and do what we can to hit that price point. We only produce speakers that we're passionate about, that we would want to own ourselves, and we build them and we develop them that way, to that point. And I hope this kind of explains where we're coming from. If you look at cabinet design, our cabinets are made out of HDF wood composite with synthetic stone And we use, to damp them, we use a constrained layer dampening or triple layer dampening with a plasticine material in between them. In addition to that, we designed the reinforcement structure in such a way that we have non-parallel or also panels that are not of equal size and shape. We use different pieces of the stone inside to offset them, and the whole point of that is to break up the resonances into very small pieces that don't reinforce small elements. And we do that, and my dad, was very keen on, he started this in the 90s, an elegant solution. So we're able to now, instead of using brute force engineering to throw some type of material at the cabinet that costs a lot of money, by doing it this way, we've eliminated the distortion, let's say the resonance distortion. Now we can invest the lion's share of the parts budget in the components that actually make sound, and we can use much higher quality caps and drivers and signal path, and so anyways, all of that is said that I hope people see that there's consistency in what we do. It's a team effort, but I think we're very consistent on our delivery.
Great. And forgive me if I butcher this. Do you use a clippable near-field acoustic scanner in the design of your speakers?
Sometimes, I mean, we have a suite of electronics that we use to analyze, both in the test environment and then in the listening environment. But ultimately, we're using a series of processes to do driver integration, and there's a lot of shorthand that we're able to do because, if you see, the Ultraline, for example, all incorporate this wonderful underhung magnet structure cone with this beryllium tweeter, and so we start with the mid-range and we kind of augment from there. But for testing, we have a couple different materials, a couple different products. And remember, we've been doing this for 50 years. So we have some design suites that I think are quite excellent, that are decades old and not in production anymore, but we still benefit from them.
Great. Where can I buy your speaker, and do you ship worldwide?
So Gary, do you want to talk about this? I'd love to introduce you to our executive VP.
Get close to the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, here, let me hand this to you.
I think I posted that while you were talking.
Yeah.
But to directly answer the question, we have a very small U.S. network right now. We have locations in Southern California, Dallas, Minneapolis. We have a new location coming right after Expona, coming Von Schweikert listening room, coming to the Chicagoland area.
Oh.
And we have a phenomenal partner
Yeah.
in New York. So our partners there are New Life Audio, Scott Walker, who has the full line. All the way up to he has the only pair of Ultra 11s in the United States right now. Phenomenal.
And 9s.
And 9s and 7s, all the way
You
down
name
to
it.
Model 1.
Shock
Thank
waves,
you.
yes.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. So he's in Southern California.
Yeah, right
in
near
Anaheim.
us.
Yeah, and then in Dallas. And then we have Choice Audio in Minneapolis. So 5.
And why is that, Gary?
Well, we'll expand that, but not by a whole lot.
Right.
So if you can't get to us at one of those locations, or the few more we'll be adding.
Sure.
We're looking at potentially Florida pretty soon. But again, we're not trying to be 30, 40, 50 dealers. We're a small bespoke factory. We've been this way for decades now. Damon has no interest in expanding that. It saves me some hoofing.
Yeah.
But it's about being the best, not being the biggest. Then in Europe, we're now working on expanding that. But in Asia, we have a location in Singapore, and then in Europe we have a great location in the Netherlands
And
what-
Philippines.
Yes, and the Philippines. Forgive me, 2 in Asia, and then we'll be expanding from there as well. I think the UK and also Germany soon, and those are things that'll be sorted out at the big Munich show this year.
That's right.
So you do have to work a little harder
Yeah.
to hear of Von Schweikert, but follow us,
Yeah.
as they say. Jay says, follow us, and stay tuned. All right, thanks.
All right,
Good.
Okay. Next comment. Someone said they would really like to see how these measure.
Okay. I mean, yeah, absolutely. We have, I think the last measurement that was done was of the Ultra 5, which is a step down from this, with Stereophile. John Atkinson
Yes.
did a beautiful measurement suite on it. During COVID lockdown, it was quite challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think his comment was these are excellently designed loudspeakers.
And he did publish those
yeah,
measurements.
those measurements are published.
Right.
If you want, you can check them out online on stereophile.com.
Yeah. And then we'll have something,
These have not been reviewed yet.
but they will be soon.
They will be soon,
Yeah,
so we'll have
so-
something for you in the near future.
And of course Jay's here evaluating, but
We're gonna have my evaluation.
yeah,
All right.
Jay's here is the measurement.
So you're
tool.
gonna get a review from a magazine, and then you're gonna have my take on them.
Yeah,
That's true.
Okay.
Okay, great. Sorry, give me 1 second. Let me catch up here on the questions. I'm trying to make sure we don't miss anybody. Okay, here we go. What electronics and sources do you use to design and voice your speakers?
Well, let's just say I am okay. To be fair, we do change the stable of electronics does change over time. Some things have been in the stable for a long time, and new products come in all the time. But we're not here to endorse one electronic
No.
or another. It's
But
really
Damon,
important.
you can name a few. You've
Yeah,
got
I mean, for sure.
Constellation, you've
Constellation,
got VAC,
VAC,
Westminster
Westminster
Labs, we got
Labs.
some Trafomatics in there
Traffomatic
now.
was quite a new addition.
And then we have something new, and then we're hearing the Griffins today.
Right.
and we'll have to-
Unfortunately, we don't
we'll-
have them in our stable
We'll have
all
to
the
figure
time.
out a way to get a hold of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I mean,
so,
but to be fair, again, I really want to emphasize, when I'm looking at wire, when we're looking at transducers, we are really trying to find, I know this may sound trite, but we're trying to develop a very neutral product so that we get out of the way of the signal. And one of the ways we do that is by seeing our speakers through a lot of different electronics. And it gives you a more comprehensive view of it. And I hope you get a chance to hear them on different electronics, hopefully in the same listening session, to really get a sense of what I'm talking about, which is what we kind of did yesterday here with Jay.
Great. So Elliot said, thank you. This was very informative. And IMO, it's a good way to get across your design philosophy.
Oh, thanks, Elliot.
Have you thought about an external active crossover for the speakers?
We've let's put it this way. We are always interested in whatever developing technologies there are. One of the first principles my father instilled into us, and I think it was instilled to him by one of his mentors, Dr. Heiser, is leave your preconceptions at the door. I can't tell you how many times as a young kid, Dad, what do you think would happen if we did this or that? And he'd say, I don't know, let's test it. So, and if you look at our designs, maybe as proof of what I'm saying, we're not dogmatic about almost any aspect about loudspeaker design. We're happy to incorporate new technology as it emerges, whether it's driver technologies or materials or what have you. So we're very interested in that, and it's definitely something as we develop and see where it's going, we might get incorporated in, absolutely.
We've had quite a few comments congratulating on the design, on the look.
Good.
People can't wait, to get the review and
Awesome. Good.
hear
you
your
for that
thoughts on that.
for summary.
Jay, how do those Von Schweikers compare to OCD Mikey's Fisher and Fisher speakers? Here we go.
I think I already answered that question, right? I think I made a comment. I mean, this is just another level of a loudspeaker. Does that mean I'm downplaying Fisher and Fisher? No, that's not the intent here. We're not here to do any of that, Jay's Audio Lab. We're here just to present you another reference point. That's it. That's the job here. You guys decide ultimately what you buy, but our job is to inform you of, hey, if you're considering that, you may want to take a look at this. That's what we're doing here. So it's hard to say. Remember, I haven't heard OCD Mikey's speakers in his own environment.
That's important.
And so it would be a disservice to pretend that I know his speakers quite well. I've only heard him in a small room at a show at Capitol Audio. I didn't really even have a chance to listen to them in Tampa, so I can't really make that comparison if I'm being honest.
Okay. Next question. For us people who are not rich people, which von Schweikert speakers would you recommend?
Well, okay,
AKA
so,
Model 1 Endeavor.
yeah, the Model 1 Endeavor is our, I guess you could say, it's our entry-level model, but I can assure you that the same methodologies and principles and of driver integration, cabinet design, finish, fit, all that
Tweeter,
is
rare ambient.
is in that model. And in fact, thank you, Gary, it's important to point out, this Beryllium tweeter and this ribbon that we have on this Ultra flagship model is the same tweeters that are in the Ultra One, the Model One. So, it's just a matter of price point availability. I can tell you that in the right environment, the dual woofers, aluminum woofers in the Model 1 can really give you some deep, tight bass. The mid-range is very open. Again, we work really hard to achieve a consistent level of performance to price, irregardless of price point. And I take as much pride in the quality of performance that the Model 1 delivers as I do the Ultra 7.
So there's a question for me. Look at those amps, laugh out loud. I'd hate to see that electric bill every month. You would hate to see that electric bill every month. I get the pleasure of seeing it every month, and it's a surprise. Great presentation. Let's see.
Another 10 minutes of this and we'll wrap it up. So give them other great questions there.
Some great comments here. Thank you for the excellent content. Have I missed any discussion on the subs will be incorporated into Jay's system?
Here's one thing we could do before you continue. Let me. I think people are gonna wanted this more than anything too. They wanted you to kind of go over an overview of how you incorporated the subs. How do you
Integrate them?
Yeah, integrate them.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm happy to do that. So, first thing is, you come in and you listen to the room, and then we set up the main speakers completely, dial them down to the last adjustment, and then once that's done, and if the customer is going with the, we call it active room correction, again, there's no digital signal processing, this is an analog solution, then we integrate the subs. And really, it's, there's 4 controls: amplitude, phase, frequency, and LF cut or boost at 25 dB. And then, of course, there's the positioning of the subs. We have the 12-inch on the front and a vented slot on the back, which gives me flexibility in how I integrate into the room. In addition to that, the phase the phase control is critical. It really separates these from other subs that are in the market. Some companies have phase control and it's a flick switch, 0 or 180. Well, there's 360 degrees of that phase, and the chances that you're going to be at 0 or 180 is pretty slim, not good odds. So, our control goes from 0 to 180, but because we have an isolation transformer, a step-down transformer in there by Lundahl that isolates it, I can now, regardless of how these amps are grounded, because we're taking the signal from these amps right off the speaker binding post, I can invert the phase with it without any interaction with this and now go from 180 to 360. So I have the full spectrum of phase angle to adjust, and then it's kind of like an optometry appointment. And what I mean by that is I know roughly where the frequency needs to be, and I set the amplitude at just a little bit so we get a little taste of it. And I go through the frequency ranges, or in this case, I first started with the woofers firing against the wall about 3 inches away, and then I adjusted the frequency where I thought it would be. And then you just do good, better, good, bad tests on the frequency until you lock it in. And you know it's locked in for two reasons, because A, there's no sound coming from those subs. Everything is coming from the front of the sound system, from the speakers. And there's suddenly the bass is extremely open, tight, and controlled, and even the mids and highs become more resolving. And the room develops a different atmosphere because you've now canceled that rear wave. So all the dips and peaks in the room have disappeared. You can walk around the room, it's very linear. And then from there, you just kind of adjust the frequency and volume, maybe a little LF cut or boost, depending on what's going on in the room, until it's completely disappeared and giving you the best bass possible. And as a matter of fact, in this situation, we ended up, once we got them canceling properly, I ended up increasing the level on the foundation just one more notch to give it a little bit more throw, and then I canceled a little bit more at the back of the room and just gave it more dramatic impact.
Great. We have another question about measurements, but we already covered that. So if you guys don't mind going back once the live is over, you can listen into that explanation. Damon and Gary, great to see you on Jay's channel and in Florida. Oh, Damon, could we hear these loudspeakers this year at Munich? Thanks, amazing presentation.
Thanks, guys. We will have a presentation at Munich, but this year it's all about the Mini 7. That's the code name of the VR30. It's our new $50,000 to $60,000 loudspeaker that incorporates this same architecture, but with different cell drivers, brand new cell drivers with a wonderful XMAX from Accuton.
And a lower price.
A beautiful beryllium tweeter, and so we'll be showing that at the Munich show this year. The foundation version is $59,000, and the non-foundation version is $53,000.
The location is the smaller show
Yeah,
at the Marriott Hi-Fi Deluxe.
right. We're gonna do the Hi-Fi Deluxe this year. We're doing a lot of appointment demonstrations, but we are open to the public, so feel free to come by.
Okay, do these speakers use DSP?
No, and that's so important. Yes, this is an analog speaker. You know, you could take the foundation out of it and just hook straight into the crossovers like you normally would, and you would hear the exact same thing. We've just taken, the whole idea is an analog solution to room correction. I'll go through for those that have already heard it, I apologize, but one of the biggest constraints and the difficulties of setting up a loudspeaker, it doesn't matter how linear and flat it is in a test environment, once it gets into the room has its say, whether there's too much bass, not enough bass, whatever, reinforcement, cancellation. So by doing the foundation, we're literally just taking the signal off of these amplifiers or whatever electronics you have, feeding that into the bottom pair of binding posts, which goes through our amplifier into a passive network, no DSP, and into the loudspeakers. We do all of that to just put an amplitude control on it so that you can level the speakers flat to the room. And it's kind of liberating when you experience it, especially with someone who sets up a lot of systems, because no longer am I trying to split the difference between where the speakers image best and where the bass is the best it can be in that room. Maybe not the best bass that speaker's capable of, but certainly in that room. And now when I set up, I simply focus on imaging first, find out where that is, and then I set the bass flat to that location. No DSP, full analog. It's a unique animal, and it's important for us to kind of explain what we're doing here so people can understand. But if that's something you're not into, you can certainly buy these without the foundation. So.
Okay. Jay, have you started building that statue for your wife yet?
I have not started to build that statue for my wife yet, but I have to work on it. I see that now.
Oh gosh, love those comments. Okay. Aren't the speakers coupling to each other in the middle? I always have to put an absorber in between.
Yeah, I understand. Look, that's another thing too, and I hope that Jay can to speak to that in future episodes where he talks about how our wave launch is different than other loudspeakers. I mean, we've been doing it our way since the early 80s, late 70s. And there's a little marking where the previous speakers were on the floor. They're a lot more towed in than ours. If you notice, we have just a little bit of toe in. And when I'm setting up, and again, I'm setting up for image first, I try to go for as wide as displacement as possible until you lose that coupling. And then I bring it in ever so slightly and do a little bit of toe in until I get that solid center image again. And because of the way we radiate, we're not beaming the wave launch at you. We're trying to inversely decode what the microphone encodes, and to that end, we're all about wide phase angles and being able to be linear at far off axis positions. So, as a matter of fact, I hope at some point Jay can come up and stand in between the speakers and listen and explain if there is any difference in the tonality of the entire frequency spectrum from top to bottom here versus in that listening position. I think you can walk back and forth and it's very linear. You can also even get to the far extreme side and it's very linear. What that means is they're going to launch differently. So you may or may not, depending on the dynamics of the room, the physics of the room, have an issue with that center film. Typically, I don't experience it, and I have some customers with some really challenging systems, including big, giant, OLED displays in between the speakers, and yet, with a little bit of adjustment, we're able to mitigate that kind of center image issue. But yeah, you're right. It's all about getting the coupling first, and you build the setup based on that from that point on.
Okay. Will foundation amps be an option at some point for Model 1 Endeavor series?
So, yeah, I think it's definitely something we would consider. As a matter of fact, the Model 1 is the only model that doesn't incorporate the foundation technology.
Okay.
Presently.
So there's a chance.
Yeah.
Does the Von Schweikert Model 1 use Dayton Audio's RS bass drivers?
We use aluminum drivers with a phase plug, and the truth is the manufacturers that make those drivers make drivers for a lot of different manufacturers, but ours are built with the motor structure and the damping factor that we need for our speakers, so it's different.
Okay, so great content, great speakers. I love that they seem to radiate from behind. Is this construction similar to how my beloved Martin Logan Renaissance 15 act?
To some degree. I mean, if you like that big giant soundstage, which I assume you do, they broadcast that. But our technique leads to what I would say is more pinpoint imaging, literally layers and heights that are very palpable and have very distinct weight. And that's part of again, how we do that wave launch of trying to radiate that spherical linear wave launch. It leads to very tight pinpoint accuracy.
Is there a favorite brand of capacitor used in these Von Schweikers? Mundorf or Duland?
Duland? Yeah. So we are, again, we're not, I'm not dogmatic. Our networks actually, we for every position in the network, we try different capacitors and resistors, inductors. They all have their trade-offs and traits. The design process is a lot of left or right, A or B decisions, ABC decisions as you're going through it, and that's why the voicing is so critical. Capacitor materials, just like driver materials, have a huge impact on the voicing of a speaker. And I guess the way I would answer it is no, we do not use exclusively a specific brand or even a specific line of a brand of caps. It's always implementation. We might use different types for the tweeter, for the mid-range. It just depends on during the voicing process. What's really interesting, I guess you're already aware of this, is your frequency's response for the most part is going to be identical, regardless of your capacitor assortments, right? So it's all about that voicing. You're still going to have the same quantity but entirely different quality.
Are there grills for the Ultra 7s? Which you're going to have to watch our previous live for the answer to that question, because we answered that question on the live yesterday, didn't
showed
we?
it.
Yep, and we showed it. So
Yes, they did.
I would
check
like,
that one out.
I would like to show one thing though. Yes,
Sure.
there are grills for these, and I encourage you to watch that live stream. But every driver on this speaker, front and back, also has its own grill actually on the driver to protect them.
Awesome. 1 second. Let me catch up here. How will the planned tariffs hit von Schweikert?
Well, we're pretty lucky. We're a U.S. manufacturer.
Yeah.
And that's been the case for 50 years, and it's not going to change. We have decades-long relationships with U.S. suppliers and manufacturers. Granted, we do benefit from Accuton drivers and other
Norway and Germany mostly.
mostly in Germany.
So, I mean, I would say some, but not a great deal.
Right, not a great
Yeah.
deal. And you know, we've lived through this type of fluctuations over 50 years, and it's just something we will be adapted to.
Great. We have another question about the tweeter. Why did you choose the beryllium tweeter over the diamond tweeter, and would you ever consider using a diamond tweeter or a diamond meter range?
Absolutely. Again, we're not agnostic. We're agnostic when it comes to materials, and you know, it's when you're developing a product, you have a parts budget, right? And so you're looking for the elements. You've got to be very judicious in how you invest that parts budget. You don't want to spend it all on the cabinet. You don't want to spend it all on the tweeter. So you look for where you're getting the most bang for your buck. And this beryllium tweeter, as you can tell, we use it all the way from the 1 in our entry level to 2 of them per channel in the Ultra 7. It's an amazing tweeter. We're very skilled at working with it. We get the resolution, tonality, musicality that we want out of it, and it fits the price points. We are aware of diamond drivers. We're always looking at them, and if there's a design parts budget where it works into, we certainly consider it.
What are the least fussy von Schweikers for untreated rooms?
It's a model. It's a model.
Yeah, the Model
AKA
1
the
is kind of like let's put it this way, and this is what I say. It's quite easy to set up a pair of speakers, von Schweikert speakers. They couple to each other first, and then you couple to the room. We give solutions that resolve challenges in the rooms, but truth is, they sound really great just when you set them down. But there's, I think, and this is a challenge for me in dealing with new dealers when they come on board, is it's quite possible, or distributors, they get good sound and they're satisfied and they stop because they're getting good sound. And I challenge them, okay, but spend the time, explore the room, and find out how much you're still leaving on the table. So, from my experience, the Model 1 is unfussy. You just set them down and they sound great. But if you really want to tweak them, they will resolve a 1/4 inch of toe end. So it just, it depends on how much effort you want to put into it. But you can literally drop a pair of ones in a room and they sound pretty good.
We have 190 viewers right now and 251 likes. Keep those likes coming, guys. That's what makes this possible. I'm going to go ahead and combine 2 questions here. Somebody wants to know how much do they weigh, and I know we've already addressed it, but maybe for the people that came later, how long does it take from placing the order to delivery, more or less?
Yeah, so these are, I think they're about 180 pounds per channel. In that weight is largely driven by how we're dealing with cabinet resonance, right? So we have 2 inches of HDF material here.
How much stone do you
We
need?
have stone.
Whatever.
Yeah, we have synthetic stone panels and modules inside there with plasticine, which actually adds to the weight. And then in this model, the drivers, it's entirely different picking up the speaker empty and picking up the speaker with the driver component. So, yeah. As far as production though, okay, so it's important, for me to explain. All of our speakers are built with a customer's name on it. They're built to order. So, they're picking out the color, the finish. It's not a widget. It's not sitting around waiting for people to order and we ship them out. We start production when we receive the order. That said, we understand that people may take quite a bit of time to decide what the right loudspeaker is for them, but once decided, they want to begin enjoying them as quickly as possible. So we've done everything we can in our production process to eliminate the time it takes. And to be frank, the really deciding factor is getting this paint finish, right? Because you can't rush it. And we're lucky to live where we are and produce where we are, where we have a very, relatively fast outgassing, hardening time span, so we can react to it. So bottom line, to answer your question, 6 to 8 weeks, depending on models. If you're looking at a 9 or 11, it's going to be a little bit longer. But 6 to 8 weeks, we build it, to your specification on fit and finish, and then we deliver it. So.
Jay, will you use your footers on these?
Definitely, we're going to put the critical mass footers. Absolutely. I mean, these guys have done that many times at shows, and with exceptional results. So we're going to definitely add them. As I said, I'm going to be playing with the speakers for quite some time, and I'm going to try all sorts of things. Even my cable line. We're going to try, other amps. We're going to try maybe even another source, and obviously report back. I mean, the truth is, I want to know what the speakers are telling me. The transparency, the way they can actually communicate changes upstream. It is all important. That's the only way that I can really assess. The only way I know how to assess a speaker is when I put it through all of my components and I'm able to understand, their transparency. Like I said, it's so far I've been blown away with the 2 different setups that we have used in just a short period of time, 24 hours to be exact. We went through CH Precision and then we switched over to Griffin Audio. Maybe I'll put some esoteric gear. As you know, I still have esoteric. I actually have a pair of D'Agostino Momentum M400s and MXVs in storage. So I might bring those out too and see how the speakers behave with that.
Great. So do you ground the speaker's drivers to a single earth ground, independent or none at all? And what are your thoughts about this technique in general? If we've already covered it, they can go back and view it.
Yeah, I mean, basically, no. We have the traditional grounding process that we've been doing for 50 years. We've experimented with some stuff, but to be frank, we're quite satisfied with our grounding technique.
Great. Do you recommend the use of subwoofers with the Ultra 9s and 11s, as the speakers already have backward subdrivers?
Absolutely. Let me talk about the 9s and the 11s. You're right. The 9s incorporate a 15-inch subwoofer per channel, and the 11s incorporate dual 15-inch woofers. And it's a wonderful all-in-one solution. The Ultra 9 and 11 were based on initially the concept of the VR 911 my dad introduced in 2005. That's when he introduced that 15-inch rear. And the beauty of it is you can either reinforce or you can cut or subtract from the bass as needed at the speaker. And the beauty of it is you get a lot of that necessary room control in one footprint. The real beauty of the 11s is the fact that we have completely separate controls. And by the way, the controls on the 9s and 11s are identical to our Shockwave. So you have phase, frequency, amplitude, and an LF adjust, a boost or cut, and or DBD boost to be exact. And so with the 11, you can reinforce with the bottom or the top and cut with the other one. You can literally steer that sound wave off the rear of the speaker. That said, while it will dramatically integrate the woofers from that position, kind of like the Foundation does, but in a different way, right? So if you're getting bass reinforcement, you can cut, or if you have a suck out, you can reinforce as needed into very small degrees. It doesn't do what we're doing in the back with the Shockwave, which is that standing wave cancellation. The Shockwaves, even though they're technically a subwoofer, we're using them in a uniquely, a completely unique way. We call it active room correction, but there's no digital processing. It's all analog. And once they're dialed in to phase, frequency, and amplitude, and you're pressurizing that wave launch at the back of the room, you eliminate that standing wave, you eliminate the nodes in the room, the dips and peaks. You come in the room, and even when the system's on, oh, and by the way, it's receiving the signal from here. So as you raise and lower the volume, they're naturally raising and lower in symmetry to each other. It's fully integrated, it's very fast, it's a non-reactive room cancellation system, so it's as immediate, as fast as you can get. And by eliminating that standing wave, you're not just dealing with the bass frequency, you're eliminating that distortive wave that comes into the room and is affecting your mids and highs. Everything becomes more open, the blackness really settles in, and what that's about.
Damon, can you just briefly mention that late summer, fall, we'll be introducing the Shockwave 10
Right.
for people who want the technology at a lower price point in a smaller form factor.
Absolutely.
It's going to be half the size or less,
Yeah.
and probably about half the cost.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be very focused to pair with the Model 1, the VR30, or anyone that wants to have that kind of room cancellation at the back of their room. And by the way, you can do that with other models of speakers. Just saying. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Jay's audience wants to know if you're going to personally be at Expona.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to be at Expona this year in Chicago, but we're doing an off-site event and an introduction to the VR30. But
Let me offer this
Yeah.
out. We are having, everyone, we're taking a little break from the 220 room chaos of Expona. We love Expona, but
Yeah.
we want to do something a little different this year. And so we're bringing the VR30s. We're going to have a VIP event. And I'd like, just as a courtesy, because of Jay's hospitality,
yeah.
I would like to extend an invitation to any member or any viewer of Jay's who wants to come and have cocktails and hors d'oeuvres and see some very cool new stuff, including Von Schweikert, to please write me at info@vonschweikert.com, and I will personally make sure that an invitation gets to you. And Jay, of course, will be there and hanging out with us. But it's informal, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Friday night of the show, 4 to 7, we're having it at a very elegant Chicagoland restaurant nearby, and we'll even have some bus transportation.
Nice.
All right, so because of you, Jay, please
We're invited.
let's invite your people to that, so we have more friends.
Awesome.
If you enjoy, and you'll get to meet Damon in person. Angus Lung from Westminster Lab will be there. Nikolai Giartu from Rocknet. You'll get to really meet some cool people and ask some very smart people questions about digital amplification and loudspeakers.
Great. There you go.
So it is now 3:06.
Okay.
We have 174 viewers and 270 likes.
So, I think it's time to.
I think our guest needs a break.
And poor
It's
Damon.
First
been
of
fun.
all,
It's
Poor
been
Damon.
fun.
I'll put you through the ringer.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, I'll put you through the ringer. Now you know what it feels like to be a YouTuber. So
Yeah.
you've done tremendously well. I think the audience appreciates your time, of course, flying in from California and coming to work. He was doing the setup. He was rolling up his sleeves on his knees, listening, letting me listen to the system. And so the best thing I can do is feed him, which is exactly what I'm
Amazing.
going to do.
Oh my
My
gosh.
guests are fed really well
Oh, wow.
and really, really well catered to, because for me it is important that they feel welcome in the room. And then obviously appreciative of all of you guys. Okay, everyone who's there watching this live stream, who's been part of the ride. You guys are going to get a tremendous amount of videos, short clips, Damon and I are going to shoot a video tomorrow that will be released later during the week. Okay, we're going to do something, a cool conversation. Maybe he might talk a little more about the setup process and what his, his philosophy is when it comes to that. So we're going to choose a nice topic to discuss, him and I, right? And we're going to record it and then I'll release it at some point. Of course, over the next few months, you're going to get a lot of feedback, videos, interesting takes on the speakers. And that way you finally get it from me, because it's been a long time coming. I did this for you. A lot of you used to email me asking me why is it that I'm only showing Wilson or Magico or Focal, and this is a brand that was mentioned to me many times, but I made it happen. It takes time. Sometimes it's the logistics, the timing. We had COVID in the middle as well, which impacted things. And so it was excuse me to say, it was a shit show for a while, for a lot of brands. Okay, and so it wasn't easy for me, but I am also coming around much stronger and much harder, a lot more structure, with a plan in mind. And so I think I'm trying to make it easier for these manufacturers to work with me, to actually want to be here, to actually want to talk in front of the camera, and to be seen by you. Because there is something that needs to be said about that part of the business, which is the partnerships, the relationships. It is important to have those, to have that camaraderie, to have that friendship. When the cameras turn off, that we can kick back and have a drink and talk about life. And I think that makes brands a lot more comfortable, want to be in front of the camera. Von Schweikert is officially the very first manufacturer in my lab, okay, that has talked this extensively about a product, that has gone to great lengths to answer your questions for 2 hours right now. And so, again, this is a beautiful relationship, a beautiful friendship that hopefully blooms into something even better. So over the next few months, expect to hear a lot more feedback. And I'm going to be very honest with them here. Good and bad. Nothing is perfect, right? Nothing is perfect. But my job is to be optimistic about the product. My job is to be objective, because I think they also want my feedback, right? Because it is important, right? And so I'm going to do just that. They're aware of who I am, and I'm aware of who they are. No one here is lying to anybody. We're just being very passionate about this hobby. In this case, the center of the attention are the speakers, the beautiful product that's here, and everything else is just a supporting cast. All right. So once again, guys, thank you for that support.
Oh, and I would love to say thank you for the interest, guys, and spending so much time, and the great questions. I really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity.
Well, I promised it, and I delivered, right? Thank you for your support, guys. Please do not forget to subscribe and check out my website, jaysaudiolab.com, for more cool high-end used audio equipment. Until next time, peace.
Where do you end?